Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Awesome Dynamic Show. I'm Terry Levin, the Director of Sales here at Awesome Dynamic, and we got a great topic today. We're talking Amazon. I want to introduce everybody. We have Paul Dewarian, we have Tim Dewarian, we have Blake, we have Robin, and again, myself, Terry Levin, and I'm going to turn it right over to Tim, who's going to get us started on our Amazon topic of the day. Tim, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Terry. All right. Today's topic is shipping FBA inventory to Amazon. We're going to go over product prep, the shipping process, and much more. So we'll kind of jump right into it. The first thing that we wanted to talk about is, and we've covered some of these topics in previous webinars as well, but we're going to start with prepping individual units and products so that they are ready to be sent into Amazon. The first thing that you always have to prep is you want to make sure that each product, each individual unit has a label on it. We did a whole webinar about the proper way to label all of your products. So I definitely recommend you go check that out. But it's certainly a very important step to this. If you don't label your products, then Amazon can assess you a fee for each unit that is not labeled or labeled incorrectly. They also do offer a prep service where you can have them label your products instead of you having to do it all individually. The next item is doing drop testing. It's very important that you do drop testing for all your products to make sure that they survive. We call this or Amazon even calls it a 3-foot 5-point drop test. What this means is that your product, you need to drop it onto from 3 feet in the air onto 5 different sides of your box. So once on each short side, so it's 1, 2, once on the median side, once on the long side, that's 4, and then once on a corner. And if your product can survive that drop test, then Amazon considers it eligible to be used in the FBA program. Another item, if you're selling any kind of liquid goods, one thing to know is that your product must have a double seal, which means that if your primary seal breaks on it, it's not going to leak everywhere. If your product does not have 2 seals on it, then what you have to do is wrap it in a poly bag, a sealed poly bag, so that if the product does break or the seal does break, it will not, again, leak over all the other products that are being shipped with your product. Suffocation warning labels. So going back to that poly bag that we talked about, some of your products may be required to be put in poly bags, and if they have an opening of, I believe it's more than 2 or 3 inches, then you must put a suffocation warning on the bag itself. You can oftentimes just purchase stickers that are able to go on the bags themselves, which will meet that requirement, but this is something where Amazon will certainly charge you a fee if your product is not labeled correctly.
And Tim, let me jump in there on that one.
Sure.
I remember reading very recently that that's 4 inches. So unless it went down to 2 or 3, I think it's 4. But of course, everything's always changing all the time. And Tim, I'm going to let you continue to go through this list, and then I have a bunch of comments on these items. So go ahead.
Great. So next item is if your product has an expiration date, you must have the expiration date clearly marked on the outside packaging so that warehouse associates are able to look at it. So make sure you include those with every single product. There's also times where, let's say if you sell a set of products, so 2 or 3 or 4 products in the same packaging, you want to make sure that you do put a sold as a set sticker on that packaging so an Amazon warehouse employee is not going to break apart your set thinking that they're all individual units. And the last thing is about irregular box shapes. Amazon requires that if you do box your products that you box them in regular rectangular shaped boxes, not any kind of different sizes like triangles or smaller sections and parts of it. It's really important to make sure that you box it correctly. So Paul, you said you wanted to comment on some of these? Paul, it sounds like you're muted right now.
Yes. So yes, talking about labeling. So this is one of those items where, the labeling of the product, we have a whole nother section or video and blog all about how to label for FBA. And I want to make sure that we get a link to that in the description of this video and also on the page. So I want to make sure I mention that for the folks that are watching this, that we can link you to that so you can get a lot more detail on that, so we don't have to cover that in this particular video webinar. So you could certainly look at that. We have a whole half hour, even I think it's almost an hour, to get into all that detail. Isn't that right, Tim?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're going to get that in there for you. But drop testing, this is where I have a couple of things I wanted to share. And the first one is, it's the 3-foot 5-point drop test. And if you think about it, the whole idea behind the drop test is to make sure that the product survives when it goes through the system. The system being it going from wherever you're shipping it from. So if you're going into FBA, whether that's your home, office, your manufacturer, your warehouse, or whatever it is, it needs to not only survive the trip going into Amazon, the whole receiving process, getting put into the Amazon warehouse. Then when someone orders it, it's got to go from wherever it is in the warehouse, go all the way to the picker-packer, into the box, back through the logistics shipping system to the final customer's home or business or whatever. And it cannot be damaged during that entire time, or you want to do as much as you can to reasonably make sure that it doesn't get damaged. And that is why you want to drop it. So if you think about it, so when could it be dropped? Through that whole trip, all the way around. And it could be dropped by the UPS, FedEx, or USPS driver, right? It could be dropped on the way from the door of where you're sending it or your warehouse to the actual vehicle. Or if it's going onto a semi-truck in LTL or FTL shipping, it could run into a wall as it's being moved and on a pallet. So all these different impacts can happen on your products, and we want to make sure, even to the point of delivery, it gets dropped, or it gets dropped in the warehouse, it gets dropped all these other places, on any of the different corners. And the reason why this drop test exists is to make sure that the thing that's inside the box survives. So if you have a product that you're not boxing and is durable enough that you can actually drop it and it does not get damaged, that's fine. You don't necessarily have to put it in the box. You can poly bag it and it'll be just fine. But if it's something that's maybe plastic or it's fragile in some way, you have got to make sure that that thing is properly packaged so it does not get damaged. Because customers, at the end, at the outcome of this whole process, when they receive something that's damaged, they're upset. And Amazon's big on customer service. You got to make sure that that product gets into their hands and they're happy with what they have and it hasn't been damaged along the way. So even though the minimum is a 3-foot 5-point drop test, what we really should do is, what is the surface we're going to drop it on? I advocate for concrete, something really hard and unforgiving. We don't want to be doing this on a carpeted surface, or even a wood floor is a little bit more forgiving than a concrete surface. We want to make sure that we're doing it on a very hard, unforgiving surface. And although the minimum is 3 feet, I like to go higher than 3 feet because I want to be absolutely for sure certain that it will not break, and go a little bit above and beyond. So I would do the 3-foot 5-point drop test, and then I'd probably do another one from 6 feet. And then we've even gone to the point, just because sometimes it's fun to get a little bit extreme, throw one out the window of the second floor of your building and see if it survives if it hits. And if it can survive that level of being thrown out a window, you know it's going to survive every step of the way and get to the customer. And that's what we're really looking to do, is make sure that the customer gets the final product undamaged no matter what happens to it. But Tim and Blake and Terry, I wanted to see if you had any comments on my monologue there.
No,
Terry,
it all made sense to me.
Okay. There's one other item there that I think was interesting that we did before Amazon got really restricted with liquids. We know that glass containers that have liquids in them can anything over 4 ounces is restricted, and you can't have it in an Amazon warehouse. And that's where, because it's unlikely that it'll survive that. But back when it was allowed, even like a bottle of wine, or we were doing bottles of olive oil, that we really had to package super good, and we did some extra testing to make sure that it didn't break and start going everywhere. But now that's not even allowed to even go in that direction with something that's bigger than 4 ounces. Terry, it looked like you had a comment on that.
No, I actually was just going to say that I think we covered it pretty well, and so far so good for me.
Okay, good. Any other questions before I move on? All right. So next question is, or next item here is the liquid double seal. And that's where if you do have something that is liquid, segueing into that, we don't want it leaking all over the place. If you've ever received a box at your residence because you've ordered it on Amazon and the thing's leaking when you get it, there's nothing more disgusting than having a whole bunch of liquid seeping through the box as it's sitting on your front porch when you've gotten it. You got to make sure that it's sealed tight. And again, go a little bit more extreme. If you have something that's liquid, double seal it and break it and see if it is actually leaking out. If the double seal that you've devised to get this done does not prevent it from leaking, do a triple seal or a quadruple seal. Make sure that that end result of it leaking on the customer does not happen. We want to make sure that the experience is top-notch.
All right, great points, Paul.
Suffocation warning labels, and that's where 4, 2, 3 inches. You know what? If you're putting it in a bag and somebody can possibly suffocate, that's where you just put a label on it anyway. And they sell these labels in big rolls that you can certainly get and slap on poly bags that you have, or they even sell the bags with the suffocation warning printed right on them. So that's something that you can you can buy the bags with it on there. You can buy the stickers and put them on the bags that you already have. But putting them on there is really important. It's a violation. They say that it's supposed to be on there. A lot of people get away with it for a little while without. So you might be saying to yourself, well, I've been doing it forever, and I haven't ever gotten dinged for the suffocation label thing. Well, one big thing with Amazon is as you get more successful, more popular, your listings are moving up in the rankings, and it starts selling more and more, they do a quality check. They take your product off the shelf and take a look at it. Is this meeting all the guidelines? And if it isn't, they immediately shut it off and tell you what to fix. So if you want to avoid that situation happening to you, it's really important to make sure that you're handling that situation before it happens. Now, expiration dates. And I hope Blake is still with us. I know we lost Robin, but Blake has a lot of experience with expiration dates because he runs his own seller account and does a lot of things with food. Blake, I would love if you could give us a little background on your experience with what is currently happening with expiration dates and kind of the history of some of the different changes that have happened, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Any products that are food must include an expiration date, not only on the master carton, but essentially when you are submitting it to Amazon for inbound shipment to their FBA warehouses. And in the past, you didn't have to put box level contents, essentially every item that's in there, every weight of each item, and then the expiration date of each item. But now that is required for all food items. And if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is minus the expiration dates, box level content is now going to be required, I think, starting October for every inbound shipment to Amazon's warehouses. And it might sound tedious, but what it's going to do is streamline the inbound process. It's going to make your products be entered into their system quicker once it's received at the warehouses. There's going to be less issues with people at Amazon taking products out of your boxes and putting it in their warehouses for when it's ready to be shipped. And it reduces confusion amongst Amazon's computer systems when because you cannot commingle any food products. And expiration dates, there's all kinds of rules and regulations, but in general, food products need to be not expired within 90 days of, how do I word this? There needs to be a 90-day window of when the product gets to Amazon before it expires, and then there's a 50-day window that Amazon will actually take your product before it expires and either give you an option to destroy it or return it. So Amazon is making sure food products and liquid products that are consumable are fresh and not nearing the expiration date when they get to the customer. And those dates have been slowly increasing. It used to be, I think, around 30 days and then 50 days, but now it's 50 and 90 days. So be wary of which food products you're sending in, because if they have very short expiration dates and they're not flying off the shelves, there's a good chance you will have to either fulfill them by yourself or just be quite good at shipping them in timely and efficiently. And overall, that's about it. The expiration date must be in 36-point font or higher and on each individual unit, so that there's no confusion amongst Amazon or the customer.
Great, Blake. That was an awesome explanation there. I just want to comment on a couple of things. You used the word commingle, which some folks watching this might not know what that means. But again, what I mentioned before in terms of the labeling, we get into that in a lot of great detail. So if you're unfamiliar with the idea of commingled inventory versus labeled inventory, watch that video. We get into a lot of detail why it's super important to label. It's required on the food end. You can't commingle at all. But in other areas, you don't really want to be commingling anyway. It does make the process easier, but for a lot of reasons that we go into that video, you want to label. Moving, and the other thing I wanted to mention was the idea of not having any expiration dates on there. That used to be possible. We actually had a client who had sent in more than we had advised in terms of product, and Amazon disposed of it for them, multiple pallets of product. And that's where, if you're not staying on top of doing everything exactly the right way, you risk losing all that money in your investment in your inventory. So really following the rules is super important, because you don't want some person in an Amazon warehouse getting the wrong idea about your product and then dispose of it for you and saying, too bad, it violated the rules and now you've lost all that money. So it's really important to follow those rules.
And I just wanted to point out that it was because they didn't follow the strict instructions that we gave them that's the reason why this happened.
Yes. So we I remember that particular situation. We advised specifically how to do the packaging to prevent the leakage of the glass product. We also advised on how to label it specifically for the expiration date, but the client did not heed our advice and disposed of tons of product. Product was arriving at people's houses leaking. It was pretty much a disaster. So that's why it's very important to follow these things. A lot of people don't realize how very, very important it is to make sure that you're doing these things the right way. And that's why I'm taking the time to just walk through this list and give you some examples of some worst-case scenarios and how it can really cause a huge issue. Irregular box shapes. That's not one that we've really come across, but I could imagine somebody coming up with some wacky-looking box to try and put some together. But the one big takeaway with the box shape is, regardless of it, obviously you don't want it to be irregular, but if you're doing rectangular, a square box, you just want to make sure you're following the guidelines, and knowing if it's costing you money getting into a bigger box to accommodate an oddly shaped item. And that's where your fees, your FBA fees, will increase based on the size of the box. And Tim, did we have another webinar specifically covering that, the box size, in your recollection?
I don't think so. It might have been part of FBA fees where we talked about oversize a little bit, and that was in that Amazon fees webinar that we did.
Okay, but I think we did a little bit, but I want to get into it just in case we didn't. But they have a certain set of box sizes, and depending on the size and the weight of your item, after it's in the final box that the customer will receive or that you're sending into Amazon, if you exceed any of those things, your fees can jump quite quickly. But one example was there was a customer of ours had product in a box that was 8 inches cubed. And because the smallest side cannot exceed 8 inches, and this 8-inch cube box was 8-inch cube on the inside, the outside was 8 1/4 cubed, the smallest size on the box exceeded the smallest side of the box exceeded the maximum amount by 1/4 inch, and because it did, they paid $2 extra every time they sold one, and they're selling hundreds a week. And that's just a huge mistake. All we had to do to fix the problem is put it in a tinier box, so 7.5 by 7.5 by 8. So this way, the smallest side was under that amount, and that made them an extra $2 every single unit they sold, which would make a huge impact on the bottom line. So paying attention to those details could really make a difference. Tim, go ahead and walk us into the next slide, would you?
Great. So the next thing we're going to cover is the shipping cartons. So this actually has to do with no matter how you're going to ship your product to Amazon, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail if we have time a little bit later. But whether you're shipping your product using what's called small parcel delivery, which is through UPS or another carrier like that, or you're doing LTL/FTL, which is palletized shipping, it's important to make sure that all your boxes meet these requirements.
Tim, I want to jump in there really quick.
Sure.
A lot of our viewers are going to be folks that are manufacturers that know what LTL and FTL stand for. Would you mind just defining that real quick for our viewing audience?
Absolutely. So LTL stands for less than truckload, and FTL stands for full truckload. Both are ways to be able to ship the boxes to Amazon, or both of them will ship on pallets. But as the name implies, and we're going to kind of break down how Amazon distinguishes between LTL and FTL. But essentially, if you're doing like half of a truck or less worth of pallets, which is usually up to about 11 pallets, then it's considered an LTL shipment. So if it's 12 or more pallets, then it goes into FTL shipping.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Yep. All right, great. So kind of starting with the first bullet point, every box, and even on pallets, you have to put all your products into shipping cartons so that they're easier to handle once they arrive at the warehouse. So every box has to be 50 pounds or less. If you have individual items that weigh more than 50 pounds, they cannot weigh more than 150 pounds. And at that point, it needs to be labeled as a team lift. And that's for OSHA standards, I believe. And if you are doing LTL and your product is actually more than 100 pounds, then you have to put on their machine lift as a label. And again, that's only for individual items. So if you have individual items that weigh less than 50 pounds, you can't put, but let's say if they weigh between 25 and 50 pounds and putting more than one in a box is going to cause it to go over 50 pounds, you cannot do that. Every box that contains more than one unit must be less than 50 pounds. All right, and then we also wanted to talk a little bit about how to, when you pack each box, so you have all your labeled products, you put them into a box, you know it's going to be less than 50 pounds, then every single box needs to then be filled with dunnage or void fill. So this is just to fill in that extra space in the box to make sure products don't shift around while in transit. So the acceptable types of void fill that you can use are bubble wrap, full sheets of paper, and we recommend heavyweight craft paper for this, inflatable air pillows, and polyethylene foam sheets. We actually use bubble wrap. We actually mostly use full sheets of paper whenever we pack our boxes. We also use inflatable air pillows, which we end up collecting from shipments that we just receive from Amazon because they usually fill a ton of air pillows in there. You can also get an air pillow machine. They can tend to be a little bit more on the expensive side, but if you do a lot of shipping, they are going to be more economical in the long run. All right, and then you have unacceptable types. Make sure you don't use packing peanuts. There's nothing that Amazon hates worse than opening a box and then having packing peanuts go everywhere. It is an absolute mess, and Amazon will not like you. Also, don't...
There's fees. There's fees.
Yes, you can absolutely be charged a fee for that. Foam strips also is something that you do not want to use to pack. Crinkle wrap. So this is where you basically have like almost kind of shredded confetti, almost as bad as packing peanuts. In fact, probably even worse. And then just shredded paper, which is very similar.
And the reason I was kind of stressing the fees piece is because it's not that they just don't like it. Of course, they don't like it. Nobody really likes getting anything packed in these things, but they will ding you. and they will continue to ding you and continue to do it. And eventually you could actually have your account shut down if you continue to do things that are unacceptable. So really paying attention to this is important as well. The other concept that I wanted to bring up is, yeah, how much void fill should I really have when I'm packing my products? And there's the idea, yeah, this specification is for the box that contains all the units that will end up in your customer's hands. But even in those units that end up in your customer's hands, inside there you can have the dunnage to keep the product from breaking. So when we talked about the 3-foot 5-point drop test, you can use that dunnage or air pillows or whatever. They're not talking about what's inside of what the customer receives. They're talking about how you pack the group of items that go to multiple customers. So what you use in that box that ends up in the customer's hand and they open up to go inside, you can use almost anything you want, although you want to be mindful of not getting them upset with having a whole bunch of packing peanuts. But when we're talking about all those units going to a bigger box, a case pack of what you're sending in, that's where you need to follow these guidelines. And further, how much void space you're filling is something that you should really be paying attention to, because if you're filling a lot of void space just to make it easier, you might be costing yourself more money in shipping into Amazon if you're using, let's say, UPS, because they calculate everything based on what's called dimensional weight, and dimensional weight is weight calculated based on the dimensions. And if you're filling a lot of space because it's easier, because you already have this box there, and you're not really being mindful of the types of boxes that can really make that space super efficient to use minimum dunnage, that's going to save you a lot of money right there every single time you send product in. So being really mindful of that is important to your bottom line.
So I had a question. So we talked about on a previous webinar that UPS will provide some boxes for free. Do they provide this stuff for free too, or do you have to pay for this stuff?
Great question, Robin. UPS doesn't actually provide boxes. The only place you get boxes for free is USPS for the flat rate shipping, which may or may not be appropriate for sending in that larger case packs of products because they're not that big. But what UPS does provide for free is labels, and I believe they provide a few other things, don't they, Tim? Or is it just the label?
Yeah, they provide different labels. They also provide pouches to protect your labels from inclement weather, which we're going to go over all this when we start talking about prepping the small parcel shipments. But yeah, that's a lot of stuff that you can get for free. If you have a UPS account, you can just go right to their website and go to order UPS supplies, and there's a whole ton of stuff you can get. But you can't abuse how much you order from them. They usually will only allow you to order like 50 of a certain kind of label at a time, or one roll of thermal labels at a time, etc.
Yeah, you can get. Go ahead, Robin.
Oh, well, would you recommend getting the dunnage at UPS or getting the dunnage somewhere else?
That's another great question. I want to back up and finalize the last piece that I wanted to say first, though, and that is the labels you get from UPS can be the rolls that go through a thermal printer. They can also be flat sheets that you print off of a standard laser printer. So there is different options available for you depending on the kind of printer that you have. Now, Robin, your question about the dunnage, that's something that they don't provide for free. I'm sure your local UPS store could provide you some of these different things, but if you're looking to really get a good price on your dunnage, depending on what you're buying, we use Uline almost exclusively, and they're local to us. So they're local to us in the Chicagoland area. In fact, that's where they started. They do have multiple locations around the United States, but what you're really looking for is a manufacturer of the product at wholesale, and that's usually where you're going to be able to find that stuff in bulk. Tim, do you have any more comments on that in terms of where to acquire some of the different types of things that are out there?
I do.
No, I think. Okay, Blake does.
Uline, for my brother and I, who run a small Amazon business, is not as price point efficient as for us. Amazon and Home Depot have Home Depot has for us the cheapest double thick boxes. They are very diesel. They're not like concrete, but I mean they are literally very thick, and they also have thick paper craft rolls there that are very close in price point to either Amazon, Uline, or whatever might be. But Amazon themselves also has very good prices on craft paper and much smaller boxes that you might be putting smaller products in, maybe like gift boxes, but not necessarily boxes to ship a bunch of items out to warehouse. So keep an eye on Amazon.com, Home Depot, and Lowe's. And if you have a military discount, you can also get 10 or 15% off of stuff at Home Depot, which goes quite far when you're buying quite a bit of materials.
That's great, Blake. The one thing, let's say you're a larger manufacturer, obviously going to Home Depot might not be the best option, and that's where Uline can deliver pallets of product to you. So not to put down what you're doing at all, because that would be really efficient for folks that are just starting out, or even small businesses that are starting out, to really keep the cost minimal until you scale up to the point where it doesn't make sense to do that drive back and forth, because you just want it all coming in on pallets right into your loading dock. So, depending on where you are, you want to scale in ways that are most efficient. That works out well. The other point that I wanted to make, Blake, is that shoot, I just lost the other point that I wanted to make. But Tim, you had a comment on the acquisition of the dunnage as well, didn't you?
Yeah. So I also did want to point out that Amazon, Blake said you can get this stuff from Amazon. Amazon actually has a store here that is the packaging and shipping supply store, which is, I believe, only available to you if you're an Amazon seller. So this is another great place to look for everything you could possibly need: boxes, mailers, poly bags, bubble wrap, packing foam. You can see that's quite a wide variety of products available here. So this is another great place to look to find that stuff.
Yeah, the other comment that I wanted to make, just to plug a strategic partner of ours, Regali Packaging. They're located in Des Plaines, Illinois, just outside the city of Chicago near O'Hare Airport. They are a company that actually does custom packaging. So if you're ever looking for something to be designed, maybe for the product or unit that your customer receives, maybe not for the overall product, but that might be a good place to go to get some of that stuff.
Excellent.
Tim, let's get on to the next slide, shall we?
Do we want to plug a little bit of Awesome Dynamic first before we went into more specifics, possibly?
Gary does.
Thank you. Yes, of course, I was waiting for an opportunity to jump in there. So want to just make sure everybody who's joining us today knows about the other services we have as well. So, of course, by now you know, if you didn't before, that we are an Amazon seller consultant, and we do have several different models to help people either get on Amazon or do better with Amazon. We'd love to talk to you about that. Our 800 number, 800-238-1811 is a great way to get in touch with us. Also, Terry at awesomedynamic.com will get you right to me, and we'd love to chat with you about possibilities for different ways we can help you learn about your business and help you get more profitable on Amazon. So other than that, the other things that we do here at Awesome Dynamic, it's all about getting you that targeted customer. So we like to say our customers do call us every day. Are yours calling you? So our SEO services and our website design will get you those targeted customers. That is the place to get new customers in this day and age. And we can do a great job of helping you, whether it's with your website, a new website, tweaking your website possibly, and different models of our SEO services that we offer that will get those customers calling and reaching out for you for exactly the product or service that you do offer. Another thing we're able to do for you is get you, if you're locally situated by us in the Chicagoland area, Google virtual tours. If you're not local to us, we can definitely help you as well, getting one of those set up. A great way for people to preview your business online, and we'll also give you a nice SEO boost, especially if your competitors are not doing that. So those are the main services that we offer here at Awesome Dynamic. Again, feel free to call us, 800-238-1811, or email me, Terry Levin, at terry@awesomedynamic.com, and we can talk about different ways that we can work with you. So that is my quick little rundown on our services. I'm going to turn it right back over to Tim to keep on going.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Terry. That was excellent.
Thank you. Not awesome?
Oh, it's awesome, excellent, fantastic. Use any word you want. It was great.
Terry, hey Terry, what's our tagline there?
Oh, demand awesome.
That's right. That's what you should demand from your vendor, and we happen to be awesome. So Tim, take it away.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about small parcel delivery shipments. Amazon has partner carrier discounts through UPS. We found that they're generally 60 to 70% off of standard retail UPS rates, which is fantastic. You can use a different carrier if you want to, but I really don't see a reason to unless you have a very specific situation. We've had a lot of great success using UPS for all of our shipments.
Hey, Tim?
Yes.
Can I drive my own product to the Amazon warehouse?
No. No, you can't. Even if you live really close to a warehouse and even if Amazon directs your shipment to go to that particular warehouse, no, you can't. That's a big no-no.
The reason I brought that up, we get that question quite a bit, so I wanted to make sure we covered that.
So in addition to the other requirements that we said before about boxes in general, it's important to know that even though it's not a UPS limitation, any package that you send to Amazon cannot be more than 25 inches on any one side. So when you're figuring out the cartons that you want to ship your product into Amazon, it's important to make sure you're under that 25-inch section, 25-inch limitation. Also, you just really want to make sure it's as small as possible because UPS can start to charge dimensional weight if it starts to get too large, even though it doesn't weigh very much. Now, the next thing is Amazon has started this year to require that you provide exactly what is contained in each box, what they call box level contents. This is done in a variety of ways depending on how your shipments are set up. But if you do not provide this information, Amazon will charge a fee for every unit that is in that shipment. I believe that the fee is like 15 cents per unit. So you want to make sure to provide this information. And this is actually something very new, some that they started requiring less than a month ago.
And to jump in on that one, I think Blake can comment on the additional info for food items. I believe that the box contents also needs to contain the expiration date for each item in that box as well. Is that right, Blake?
Correct. And if I'm not mistaken, I've been away from the shipping facility for a couple months, but you also have to provide the weight of each item now. If it's a food product, I don't think that is necessary for each other item though, if it's non-food or liquid that's consumable.
Great, thank you, Blake. Tim, back to you.
Sure. And Blake, does that pull from what you put into the product details when you set it up?
No, it doesn't. That's why it's kind of frustrating. I think I don't know why Amazon's doing that. I don't know if that's allowing them to cross-reference to see if anyone's trying to sneak in lower or lower weights than a product actually is, but it's tough to say. But they are not pulling that from like an ASIN or product level details.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And the reason why that's important to detail is some folks might not know, but when you upload your product into Amazon, you can specify all those details, and you would imagine that it would just pull from there. But this is a situation where it's not pulling from there. They're asking each shipment to have that level of detail.
Okay.
And to that point, according to my brother, they are still making it easier every update because Amazon, similar to other companies, they're just always updating their systems and procedures. He had mentioned last time that it was quite easy if you had an Excel sheet or were quite organized. So it seems like it is getting easier.
Awesome. Thank you, Blake.
All right. So the next thing is FBA shipment labels. So we're going to cover a lot of things that Paul went over a little bit earlier about the labels themselves. But after you create the shipment in Amazon, you put everything into the box, tape it up, weigh it and measure it, provide all the information to Amazon. Then Amazon will generate labels for you. This will be basically Amazon will generate a label for every single box that you have in that shipment. So it's prints out on what's called a 2-up label sheet. And basically what that is a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's split right in half. So you have two 8.5 by 5.5 inch labels. You can print out these labels on plain paper and then tape it to the outside of the box. But you need to make sure that you put both labels that are on that one sheet of paper onto the box. You can also get, as Paul mentioned earlier, you can get UPS provided labels for free. And basically it's, again, the 2-up labels that's on 8.5 by 11 sheet that's split right down the middle. So you can print those up on a laser printer and just stick those right on the side, right on the outside of each box. The important thing to make sure that you do with labels, whichever one you decide to use, do not place any of the labels over any corners or over any seams. This is because when an Amazon warehouse employee is receiving your shipments, they need to be able to cut open the box and be able to, they need to not only be able to easily scan it, but when they open up the box, they need to be able to have that label still be intact and full and able to be read and scanned again if there's an issue. So that's a very important point. I think a lot of people think that's okay just to put it around corners or over the seams, but it is not. And then lastly, you want to make sure, actually I have one more after this, you want to make sure that you print all these labels on a laser printer, or you can use a thermal label printer. The important thing is do not use inkjet printers. And then lastly, we also mentioned the pouches that you can get for free from UPS as well, so that you can put these inside of these pouches in case of inclement weather, and they don't get damaged or faded or destroyed.
Great rundown, Tim. I wanted to jump in here and talk about a couple of these items.
Sure.
So these FBA labels, you got the 2-up. One question that we get is, do they have to be on the same side of the box? And I'd like you to answer that question real quick.
The answer is no. They can be on opposite sides of the box. They can be upside down. They can be any orientation you really want it to be, just so long as it doesn't go over any corners or any seams.
Great. Second, when we do, you mentioned printing them out on paper and then taping them on. I've seen a lot of people just tape the edges of the piece of paper, and that's where the pouches might be a better option, but if you are going to tape, you want to tape over all the paper. So if the paper is exposed to any sort of inclement weather, like rain, snow, anything like that, it's not making that label wet. It's protected by the clear packing tape. When you do that, you want to make sure that you stretch it real nice and tight, so this way you're not getting a whole bunch of wrinkles in the tape, which could mess with how the barcode is scanned.
And you'll want to put 2 on there, 1 for each of the half sheet labels, because you don't want to just fold it in half and then put it inside of this pouch. You want to make sure that both labels are facing outward so that they can be scanned at any time.
Right. That's a great point, because it's really two half sheets. So if you pull that in half and stick it in a pouch, that ain't going to happen. You got to have that. It has to be immediately scannable on different sides of the box. So don't fold it in half. What we like to do is either cut it in half, or so you could do 2 different sides. Or if you're doing a piece of paper, just put it on a big side of the box and tape it down. So this way it's all scanned. It's all about speed for them and efficiency. It's got to be really fast. Then the other thing I wanted to point out, you said no inkjet. And why is that, Tim?
Ink smears.
Really?
And becomes unreadable. I know. Crazy.
So the toner in the laser jet prevents that problem. That's why that's important to have that there. Because on your labels that are printed on inkjet, that's actually will withstand some of the water that might hit it. But if it was ink, it would just smear right off the label. So that's why the laser jet is so important. And then you could do thermal as well. Thermal works as well. And then the different types. So I wanted to mention also that this FBA shipment labels is about shipping the whole package into Amazon, or the whole pallet into Amazon. It's not about the actual labeling of the items themselves. We have a whole other webinar video on that item. And again, mentioning it for the 3rd time now, definitely worth watching. But Tim,
and they usually distinguish those by calling those stickers, product stickers, as opposed to labels. So you'll oftentimes see Amazon refer to the FBA stickers, which is the labels for the individual units.
it's an important distinction. I'm glad you made that. All right,
Absolutely.
back to you for our final point, Tim.
Yeah, so I just want to note that once you create your shipments, you got the labels on there, everything's all taped up, then you just want to drop it off at any UPS drop-off location. A lot of people want to ask, can I have UPS come and pick it up? You're setting this up through Amazon's UPS account, so it'd be Amazon who would have to request that pickup to pick up your products, or your shipments. But Amazon's not going to do that. If you have a regular UPS pickup or you set one up through your own account, that certainly is possible. But sometimes UPS will charge for that.
Awesome. And in our experience, if you're using UPS for anything and you don't have the pickup coming right from your office, your warehouse, and you're dropping it off somewhere else, usually the pickups happen late in the evening, 5:30 has been our experience around this Chicagoland area. When I was in Florida, I actually was near a UPS hub. You could actually drop them off as late as 8 o'clock, and they actually go out that evening, which is kind of cool. You don't get that kind of fast shipping when you're going to just, let's say, a UPS store or a authorized UPS location that actually delays another day because it has to get there and be sorted until it actually goes out. So if you have access to a UPS hub and you want to get the product into the Amazon warehouse faster, go directly to the hub and drop it off there. It'll save a whole day in shipping.
So Great. if you have a item that's small, you just have to put it in a box that's big enough for the label?
Yes.
That's actually one point I was thinking of, Robin. I said, well, what if my box isn't big enough for one of these half-sheet labels? Yes, you have to at least have a box big enough to contain 2 half-sheet labels. So you can't. Yeah, I know I was saying before, let's really crank down the size of the box to save money, but at the same time, you don't want to do that at the detriment of going around a corner or over a seam with the box label. So that's a great point to bring up, Robin. Thank you.
All right. So next we are going to cover LTL shipping. And there's a lot of information here. A lot of it is very specific to people who do very, very big volume shipments. So hopefully we can get through this information quickly, but we'll stop along the way if there's any questions for sure. So LTL, FTL requirements. Aside from each box not weighing more than 50 pounds, which is what we went over earlier, it's important that you know that the entire shipment has to be at least 150 pounds or more. And each pallet also needs to be at least 150 pounds. So if you're just doing one, it needs to be at least 150 pounds. The requirements for each physical pallet is that it can't be more than 1,500 pounds total on the entire pallet, and it cannot be more than 48 inches tall for stacking pallets. And I forgot to notate this in here, but if it's just one single pallet, you can actually go up to 72 inches. But if it's stacking pallets, then it's no more than 48 inches. And that's including the height of the pallets. Each pallet needs to be a 40-inch by 48-inch 4-way accessible wooden pallet. So no single-way pallets, no specialty pallets. Wood is the preferred material. More on the material, no cardboard, particle board, or other weak materials for the pallet. And the pallet needs to be in good shape. So it can't have a pallet that's falling apart and send that to Amazon. Amazon will charge you, again, going back to the whole fee thing. And then it needs to be GMA standard grade B or greater. So if you're buying pallets, just make sure you request that kind. Any questions about the pallet requirements before I go on?
Tim, I think you did a bang up job on that. Thank you.
Absolutely. We already went over this too. If you're shipping between 1 and 11 pallets, then you're going to be doing an LTL shipments, which is, again, less than truckload. But if you're doing 12 to 26 pallets, then Amazon will bump you up to a full truckload. Oftentimes, if you do a full truckload, and we've actually had some clients who have had experience with this, if you bump up to a full truckload, you usually will be able to get a shipment into Amazon faster. So that's something to keep in mind if you plan on doing larger volume, to try and get between that 12 and 26 pallets.
And on that particular point, we've heard people with LTL that are waiting 3 weeks for their product to get in because the trucks are all lined up waiting to get in. And then we've also heard of clients that are doing FTL and their product is getting delivered the next day after being pickup because it's all going to the Amazon warehouse. So that's really some of the extremes that we've heard is 1 day for FTL, 3 weeks for LTL. Now those aren't numbers that are certainly any sort of guarantee, but that's kind of the extremes that these things can go to. So something definitely to keep in mind when you move into palletized shipping.
Great, thank you for that information. Just like small parcel delivery, there are Amazon partnered LTL and FTL carriers, and you do get discounts by going through them. You can use your own carriers, but the process to get the shipment information over to Amazon and to the carriers is more complex. But if you use their partnered carriers, it's a much more straightforward process. Your location that your pallets are being picked up from must be able to support a truck arriving. Usually if it's a residential location, they usually will send out what's called a straight truck with a lift gate. This way it can actually fit down the street and it's not a big semi-trailer with the separate trailer. And lift gate service is available if you need it, if you don't have a dock or a forklift. And that's something where after you create the shipment, you basically will, when the partnered carrier calls you to schedule the pickup, you just let them know that, hey, you know, we need a lift gate for this pickup, and they will be able to accommodate you.
Great, Tim. Let's move right into the next slide, please.
Great. So the shipping process. How do I actually create a shipment for LTL or FTL? One thing you must make sure you provide, or that you have the information available, is you got to know when the freight ready date is. So that's when your shipment will be available to pick up. How many pallets you're going to be doing, the weight of each pallet, and the product freight class. Now, if you're not familiar with what the product freight class is or what it is for your particular product, oftentimes you can actually work with that partnered carrier, let them know some dimensions and weights of each of your products, and they can give you the product class or the freight class of it. There's also online calculators that can help you calculate this information.
Wanted to jump in here. The freight ready date, that's the one nice thing about going Seller Central with FBA, is that you get to choose when you send in your product. When you're on the other side, Vendor Central, Amazon submits a PO and you've got 1 or 2 days to get everything ready. They set the freight ready date for you and you have to comply or get fined. So on the Seller Central side, it's nice that you have the option of being able to prepare, get everything ready, then say, hey, I got it ready, and then tell them when it's ready to go in.
Excellent points.
And by the way, sorry, Tim, just to jump in here, we have a whole nother webinar on the differences between Amazon Seller Central and Amazon Vendor Central. So if you want to learn more about that other side and the differences, pros and cons of each, we have a whole video about the nitty-gritty details of why you might want to consider one or the other and what the differences are and why one might be better than the other. And I can tell you, being on the Seller Central side definitely has a lot of perks in terms of ability to make a lot more money. Go ahead, Tim. Get into the next point.
That's the exact point I wanted to make. So, all right. So next thing is you must make sure that the pallets are ready the morning of the freight ready dates. What will happen is after you create the shipments, Amazon will generate a bill of lading, or BOL, within 24 hours of the pickup date, that freight ready date. And then ARN, which is the Amazon reference number. I wanted to point this out because you'll be given 2 numbers on that bill of lading. One is going to be the FBA shipment ID, and one is going to be the ARN. The ARN, the Amazon reference number, is the number that the carrier will have, and it's the number that you will reference whenever you call and speak with the carrier about arranging pickup or discussing any other kind of issues. So make sure you know that you reference that number, the ARN, and not the FBA shipment ID whenever you're dealing with that carrier. And then we'll just go over some quick pointers about how to prep your pallets. Amazon will generate box labels. So this is going back again to the labels on each box. So there's going to be actually a label that needs to be placed on every single box on the pallets. When you put the boxes onto the pallets, they cannot overhang the edges of the pallet by any more than 1 inch. Then you must stretch wrap the entire pallet. making sure that you also label it to make sure the carrier doesn't undo any of the shrink wrap. So usually there's labels that you can put on there, do not break stretch wrap, something like that. And then you want to make sure you put an FBA shipping label on all 4 sides of every pallet. So there's 4 sides on the pallet. Make sure you put the FBA shipping label on every side of the pallet, and you want to make sure it's high enough. The idea is that when the forklift driver goes and picks it up from any side of the pallet, they're going to be able to read that label without getting out of the forklift and be able to know immediately where it needs to go.
Awesome, Tim. So let's go to our FAQs here, shall we?
Sure. So these are just common other miscellaneous questions that people had about the shipping process into Amazon. One is, will my product be safe? Yes, in a nutshell, it will definitely be safe. And I know Blake did a lot of research into these particular topics that we're going to be going over here. So I want Blake to chime in here a little bit and let us know a little bit more about what Amazon does to make sure your product is safe.
Sure. Well, first of all of Amazon centers, the fulfillment centers are modern and secure facilities. There's 24-hour security staff. Almost everything is automated with with robots at this point. So there's not a lot of human interaction going on with your products. There's surveillance cameras. They have reimbursement systems in place for when a product is lost or damaged inside of the facility, and it usually favors the fulfillment, the FBA merchant, so essentially those who sell on Amazon. And back to the robots, they essentially use automated pick, pack, and ship process to facilitate safe and timely processing of orders. So they definitely make sure your products are safe there, and rightfully so. They just want the customer to be happy, and they want you to provide products to the customers, and Amazon either sells the same items themselves or makes a cut. So there's no reason why Amazon would want anything malicious to happen to your items.
One quick jump in here is Amazon even goes as far as to tell you the dates at which meltable items or items that could be sensitive to temperature should and should not be in the FBA warehouses. So this way, if you have meltable item like, let's say, chocolate, or if you have we worked with a client that has a supplement that when stored at a higher temperature, the supplement, the enzymes in the supplement can actually start to degrade quite rapidly. So Amazon gives you the guidelines of when you can have your product in there, what temperatures it will be exposed to, so you can make a really good judgment of whether or not it's a good fit for the months outside of that area.
Excellent points. The next question is, can I ship directly from my manufacturer? And the answer to that is yes. You can actually create the shipment and then send over the labels and everything to your manufacturer, and then they can ship it directly to Amazon. We, however, would say that if you don't have any prior experience with this manufacturer, that you receive the shipment yourself first so you can inspect it. I can't tell you how many times, even if you receive any kind of samples from a manufacturer, sometimes the actual production products are subpar and don't look anything like the actual production units. So that's one thing to caution about having them shipped directly to the, and also they may not prep the product the way that it needs to. So 2 really good points to make sure that you use caution when you have the manufacturer shipped directly to Amazon.
And that particular point is really relevant specifically to folks that aren't the manufacturer of their own products. So we work with a lot of manufacturers that make their own product and ship directly into Amazon. Of course, this FAQ doesn't apply to them. If they're watching, they're like, well, what are we talking about here? But a lot of folks that engage on Amazon are distributors, and they look at it as a shortcut to get it from a manufacturer, send it to Amazon. They don't have to touch it, and in a perfect world, that'd be great. But what we recommend at least initially, if you're getting started with somebody, is unless you don't have a great relationship, you're not doing maybe a video conference to make sure everything's coming together. Per some things we talked about in here and some of the other videos that we have regarding the prep of the product, the poly bagging, and all the other stuff that needs to happen, the labeling, the stickering, and all that stuff. You have them send the first batch to you, so you can make sure that it's absolutely 100% perfect, so you don't get your account shut down, you're not dinged with fees, you don't have subpar product going in. Yeah, we've seen a lot of stuff where distributor orders it from the manufacturer, sends it into Amazon, the customers start getting the product, get tons of negative reviews showing up on the product, the person's like, what is going on? So you have to have an element of quality control somewhere in there in that particular model.
And that also goes for vendors who contract out to the manufacturer of their products. So I just wanted to point that out, that's another person that this relates to.
Perfect.
And then the last question, we'll go through this really quick. Can I ship to a specific Amazon warehouse? Yes. Well, yes, but with a fee. You can actually enable what's called inventory placement, which will, because I saw Paul shaking his head. So, but for the most part, no, you really can't, not without incurring additional fee per unit. Amazon will dictate where the products will be shipped to and how many of each product. You do have a little bit of leeway of adjusting the numbers, but only 5% of the original number. And but we have seen recently that Amazon has been having everything go to one location and has been basically assigning certain warehouses as just distribution centers recently.
Another couple questions, Tim, that we kind of get sometimes is, do I have to be in an and this is another tricky one that most people would say, yeah, you do. If you want to participate in the Prime program, which is the customer side of FBA, do I have to send my product into an Amazon warehouse? And in most circumstances, the answer is yes. But there's certain vendors that can participate through Vendor Central and actually do Prime via self-fulfillment. And we've seen that with flower vendors, people that are doing like live plants and things. We've seen it with vendors that have an excellent track record doing multi-million-dollar sales on Amazon, where they're allowing them to do the fulfillment from their own warehouse, circumventing Amazon completely. So that's another caveat that a lot of people don't know about, is that you can technically be in FBA Prime without actually sending your product into an Amazon warehouse, but it's very rare and specific to certain vendors.
And just to kind of tack onto that, they are starting to bring that, it's called Seller Fulfilled Prime. They are starting to pilot it with some sellers through Seller Central now as well.
Then lastly, the one thing that I want to bring up, and then we're going to wrap up, and Terry's going to take care of that for us, but that is, why should I be in Prime? And yeah, we went through a lot of rules and how it works and everything else. And we've had some other webinars where we touched on some of those different things, but I think really get into why you need to be in Prime, because why you need to be in FBA. You have to be in it. It's the best way to go, and we can go into tons of reasons why you should be in it. But we're going to reserve that for another webinar. So when we get that one set up, we'll get a link on this video for you to take a look at that. It's the way to the most money, and that's what we want to show you how to do. So Terry, with that, can you give us a little final wrap-up here in terms of who we are, how we can help, and how they need to demand awesome?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Paul. So again, just to remind you of the services that are offered here by Awesome Dynamic. We are talking about our Amazon seller consulting, several different ways we can help you with that. Getting you new targeted customers. Responsive website design and SEO services will get you there. When it comes to that, we also offer the Google virtual tours that we mentioned earlier. Great way to preview your business online, especially good for restaurants, bars, that kind of thing, but a lot of doctors and other places are using them as well, and good for anybody, and helps your SEO as we go along as well. When you go to our website, you can look at the past webinars. and there's a tab. There you go. And there's also plenty of great blogs on there that will give you a lot of excellent information. So take care of checking those out too. A lot of great things to help you in between our webinars to give you some great information from our company. We also have a awesome list where you can sign up and be kept up to date on everything that we have going on here as well. You will find out here some live events. When we have things going on in our local area, they're always listed on here as well. And the one thing I did want to mention as well, there's some of our staff down there at the bottom, but I wanted to tell you that if you appreciate and have learned a lot from our webinar today or any of our webinars, we'd always love you to give us a 5-star Google review. And this is showing you exactly where that can be done on there. It's very important to our business, and we would really appreciate that. And we appreciate our customers who set other people the word and let them know on how great of a job we've done for them. And we keep that line going. New customers all the time, what we like to see. So that's a quick rundown on us. We appreciate the fact that you came here and joined us today. We do these webinars every Thursday at 12:30 Central. And bring your friends, bring your questions. If you have a website or that you'd like us to take a look at, sort of do a little review of, you can always get in touch with me, Terry at awesomedynamic.com. We'd be more than thrilled to have you, have that opportunity. Also, again, our 800 number, 800-238-1811. So I think that will sum it up. We would love you to use Awesome Dynamic for any of these services. And remember to demand awesome, and we will see you next week. Say goodbye, everybody.